Hey everyone, today's talk is about how to fix your mistakes when you're drawing. So whether you're new to drawing or you've been drawing a while, you probably know that feeling of when you feel like you've made a mistake and ruined something you've been working hard on. And you know what? I'm here to go over some really fun and easy ways to fix your mistakes when drawing. So whether you're using a colored pencil, marker, oil pastels, any art supplies really, let's talk about how you can fix those mistakes and turn your art into something beautiful and that you are super proud of. Let's get started. Have you ever looked at a finished drawing that you've done and considered it bad art, considered it a terrible job that you can't paint or you can't create? I think we've all been there, and if you haven't been there yet, then you're probably going to get there at some point where we all pretty much judge our own artistic abilities and think it's bad or that we've made a mistake. And like I said, I'm often am wondering now what makes people think that the art that they are creating is not good enough or that they've made a mistake. We are literally judging our own art through the eyes of another and not through our own selves. And if you are judging your own art and thinking that you've made a mistake because it didn't turn out exactly as you wanted, then let's talk about what you can do to fix it. And I use the term fix loosely because we're going to talk about practical tips for fixing your mistakes, but we're also going to talk about embracing mistakes, embracing your art style, embracing how you create, and understanding that not every mistake is actually a mistake. It might actually be a challenge, a creative challenge for you to go deeper in your art. Not everything is a mistake, and just because it doesn't look perfect technically doesn't mean your art is no good, and it doesn't mean you've made a mistake. Sometimes all you need to do is step back from your artwork or your drawing and have a fresh look at it. One of the things I like to do is, if I think I've made a mistake, I could try to fix it by covering it, or I can just, what I find fascinating is taking a picture and then looking at it through the picture, or just stepping back for a while and coming back to it in a day or two. Even if you take a picture, it's a good idea to come back to it in a day or two if you are super frustrated, because you can find new ways to correct your art after you've stepped back and gotten out of that emotion. There are lots of paintings that I have felt and drawings that I felt that were a mistake. And you know, I took pictures of them. I think I did a video where I showed a few different artworks that I thought were a mistake, and I actually threw them out. And the only reason I stumbled on them was because I kept a photo of them. And now, and when I look back at it, I can't believe I thought it was, I considered it bad art, or that there were mistakes that needed to be fixed, instead of appreciating my own quirky art style and understanding that everything doesn't actually have to be perfect, and mistakes are, as Bob Ross says, happy little accidents that add something special to your art and makes it unique to you, versus that technical perfection that I think many of us strive for. And I think it's funny because I'm a perfectionist in my life, but when it comes to my art, that is where I've found the joy of going with the flow and letting go and not trying to fix my mistakes, but trying to incorporate the mistakes into your finished artwork. And if you move quick enough, if you're drawing fast enough, then you know that you're going to make mistakes, and you have to just keep going and keep going and keep going until you end up with something that you like. And I don't mean keep going in the way of keep going because you got to fix it and you got to fix it. I've done that before. Where I've tried to keep going with the sole purpose of fixing my mistakes. And at the end, I ended up with a muddy mess. So don't try to fix your mistakes. Try to change your perspective and think of it. I'm going to write it down. Think of it as a challenge a creative challenge. Okay, I'm going to write that down. Your mistakes are a creative challenge. Okay, it's a creative challenge. How can you incorporate it into your artwork? And also, it's a challenge of self-acceptance. So, I want to write that down too. Self-acceptance. And not judging yourself based on this artwork or beating yourself up because your artwork isn't exactly what you wanted it to be. Once you let go and you really just start playing around, you really just it becomes an enjoyable process rather than always trying to fix mistakes. So that's my first tip for fixing a bad mistake, is just seeing it differently, seeing it as a challenge for you to, how can I creatively incorporate my mistakes into my art, and how can I further accept myself and my art the way I do it and the way I like it, rather than looking at art and judging it through what you've been told or what you've been taught in the way that art should be. Okay, that's the first tip for fixing your art mistakes. Let's move on to the second way that you can try to fix your mistakes. Okay, my next tip for fixing your mistakes are, I want to ask you what products you're using to create your art with. And I'm asking you that because some products are easier for you to correct your mistakes than others. The reason why I don't use a pencil is because if I'm using a pencil to draw, number one, it smudges really easily. It also allows you to erase and redraw, erase and redraw, erase and redraw. And that's where I will, as a perfectionist, lose so much time being disappointed in myself and becoming frustrated because I'm trying to draw it, erase, redraw, draw, erase, redraw. I've done that. And then even if when I get it technically perfect, I don't feel joyful about my art. That's why I honestly most of the time do not draw with a pencil. I will draw with a Sharpie marker. You can also draw with pens, and I like to do that because then I can go over it with oil pastels and cover perceived mistakes, or I can cover it with acrylic marker, my perceived mistakes. And I say perceived because I don't believe there are really mistakes. I also like a white gel pen if I'm drawing eyes and I feel like I made the pupils too big. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about, and let's just see if I can just quickly draw a face. If you watch any of my videos, you guys know that I draw a lot of faces, and I use a lot of acrylic markers. And the reason why I use a lot of acrylic markers is because acrylic markers help me, I'm going to show you, help me cover up perceived, and I just keep using the word perceived, mistakes. And I also, when I draw, create a lot of lines because you can easily cover up mistakes when you have a drawing that has all these loose wobbly lines in it. People won't know it's a mistake. They'll think it's on purpose, a wobbly line. This is where I'll draw lips using my acrylic marker. And let's say I drew her pupils too big. I can always use a white gel pen or white acrylic paint or gesso, any white to block out mistakes. I like the actual layering process. Once I got used to covering my mistakes, I started enjoying the process of layering, whether it's oil pastels, acrylic paint, whatever it is. So here we go. I'm just adding my oil pastels, and I'm not too worried about anything. I'm letting go. And because I've used different tools like acrylic marker and oil pastels on top of my ink to cover up my mistakes, I've just really found this joy of creating and not worrying about whether or not I've made an error. I also mention that because I draw every day and I'm always in my art journal, that mistakes don't bother me as much because ultimately I'm just going to turn the page and move along. And I personally know the frustration that I feel or I felt when I used to try to be perfect. And it ruined the whole art experience for me. If you're looking at your mistakes as mistakes, then you're going to be disappointed. If you look at it as a challenge to improve your art, it feels good. If you look at mistakes as just part of the journey and incorporate it into your art, then there's just less frustration when you're drawing, more forgiveness of self, and understanding those weird lines just make your art so much more unique and enjoyable than if it was drawing exactly what you see. And that's my second tip for fixing mistakes. Don't be afraid to layer. Don't be afraid to try different art materials one on top of the other to cover cover your mistakes. And the other thing I've done too, not so much with the oil pastels, but when I'm using markers and acrylic paints, I will often rip out pages from my little booklet here, and here's one. I'll rip out pages from this art book that I have. I might rip something out like this, right? I'll take a page, and if I was working on an acrylic painting, such as, let's say, this one here, and I felt like I didn't like a piece of it, I might rip a page, part of this page off, and then I would be like, okay, I didn't like this red here, so I think I'll just glue some paper on top of it. And then I'd be like, oh, to bring this together, I might have to tear a little bit off here and put it here and cover my mistakes. And then you've challenged yourself creatively, like what I said earlier, you've challenged yourself creatively to add more depth to your artwork. So was your mistake really a mistake, or was it a challenge for you to take your creativity up a notch? And so that's how I would fix a mistake with an acrylic painting. And with markers, I fix it by adding acrylic markers on top of it or adding my oil pastels on top of it. And I really like the texture. That's how I learned that I really like texture of oil pastels and paper and layering and mixed media. So is it a mistake? I don't know. Or is it a challenge to take your art up a notch, invest in your creativity, and see what you can do? Take a picture of it and step away if you're very frustrated. Sometimes a mistake can be the result of putting pressure on yourself or feeling stress when you're sitting down to draw, and you're not allowed to make mistakes, okay? And mistakes are bad, right? It's all in our thought process. So we want to think about it a little bit differently and maybe do some warm-up exercises before we draw that allows us to loosen up a little bit and accept mistakes as they come. That is why having an art journal or a sketchbook is really, really important. It really allows you a place to make your mistakes, not worry about them so much, and play around with different art supplies, right? I'm trying to draw a dog here. I don't know if this is going to work. Let's make his ears a little bit like that. Let's do this. There we go. It allows you to make mistakes by having an art journal, playing around, okay, and figuring out what your art style is. So my third tip for fixing mistakes is understanding before you sit down that if you have a certain level of expectation and stress that you have placed upon yourself to create some kind of perfect drawing, then you're almost setting yourself up for failure. Okay, that's what you're doing. If you are sitting down to draw and thinking everything I do has to be perfect. My first tip was about understanding that a mistake may not actually be a mistake, and maybe change your perspective when it comes to drawing, okay? Change your perspective and understand a mistake is not a mistake. My second tip was that you can cover your mistakes with different art materials, whether it's paper or acrylic paint or whatever art supply you choose to cover up your perceived mistake. The other tip I had was to incorporate the mistakes that you make into the artwork so that it's not actually a mistake. It actually becomes part of the artwork, and you can just move along and let it go. You can also take a picture and step away from the art for a day or two and then come back to it and see if you can look at it with a fresh eye. Is it really a mistake? Or look at it with a fresh eye and be like, yes, this was a mistake, and now I'm going to sit down and fix it without that level of stress that I placed on myself yesterday. Now, this tip is all about having an art journal, playing around. It helps you become more comfortable with making mistakes and more comfortable with handling mistakes, rather than sitting down to draw everything as though it is supposed to be perfect with 0 mistakes. And having an art journal as a place for you to make your mistakes is just so great, because you become more confident in your art. You become more easygoing when you make mistakes, and your level of stress is so much less than putting this pressure on yourself. I love having my art journal. I think one of the things I said before is that I used to throw out my art journals because I didn't like looking at my perceived bad art. And that's sad, because I could show you guys some of my perceived bad art. Maybe it wasn't as good, but you know what? So what? I think keeping your art journal going forward is a great way for you to track your progress and see how you've improved and what sort of different art styles you enjoyed at a different time, because over the years things will change, and so will your art style. Mine has evolved, and I think everybody's kind of evolves. If you have enough art journals, your style will evolve. So embrace yourself, embrace the mistakes, do some warm-up exercises so that you can practice. And a lot of artists who sell artwork, they will do mock-ups of their drawings, and they will have 3 or 4, practice paintings before they actually paint the final product. They don't just draw one masterpiece and that's it. You can see artists have many mock-ups and practices before they do a final painting. So those are my tips for fixing mistakes. I hope you enjoyed that. If you have any questions or your own tips for how to fix mistakes, I'd love to hear from you. Just leave a comment below. And if there's a topic you want to talk about next, leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a wonderful day and happy sketching.